you better figure out the votes on the details and you better do it fast.
It's absolutely a terrifying sign for Republicans moving forward that a budget blueprint, this is not a bill, this is not something that's going to make policy. This just paves the way for tax reform. We have not gotten into the nitty-gritty details yet, and those are going to matter tremendously moving forward. We will see an update on November 1st on what exactly is going to be in this bill. And that's going to be a key day to remember.
And that's the hard part. You have, again, lawmakers from, there are about 35 Republicans in the House from high-tax states like California, like New York, like New Jersey, who have to go home and tell their constituents if they leave the outline, the bill as the outline now is, we're going to take away $6, $7, $8, $9, $10, sometimes $12,000 of what you get to deduct. There's the debate about 401ks, which we'll get to in a minute. Other details about a lot of conservatives say, wait a minute, what are we going to do about the deficit? Where are we going to cut spending? Another wild card, as he was throughout the Obamacare debate, is the President of the United States, who today tweeted unity, did exactly what the leadership wanted him to do, stay out of the details. Listen, though, to Speaker Paul Ryan, being asked, as Lauren just noted, the details come out next week. Are they worried they're going to produce a bill, and as happened during Obamacare, then the President goes on Twitter to say no?
Are you at all concerned that this rollout next week, when you actually detail these tough choices, that he's not going to maybe like some of them and tweet something about it?
He's going to be in Asia, number one. No, just kidding. That was kind of a joke. Just sort of joking on that one. No, I'm not, because we're working very, very closely with the White House on this.
It's funny because it's true.
Yeah, yeah, that was a joke, kind of.
Yeah. Funny, not funny.
Right. Look, I think that this budget vote sort of underscores we're kind of obsessed with this idea that the Senate majority for Republicans is narrow. But we forget that the House majority is as well. And the president, I think, has a problem here, which is that he can tweet about unity all he wants. But the fact of the matter is that these are not unified Republicans. There are different, I think, legitimate reasons why Republicans are worried about all these different issues, the deductions, the deficit. And the president doesn't have the tools that you might expect a president to have when he has both majorities. You know, he's at 38%, the latest Fox News poll, in his approval rating. He doesn't have sort of the public mandate to be able to say, look, at this moment, the country's behind me, because the country's not behind him. So Republicans are going to need something from the president on this to, you know, step out and make a decision that could hurt them with voters. Right. For the sake of getting the Republican agenda through. Right now, the president doesn't have those tools.
You make a very important point, because at 38 or roughly 40%, makes it really hard for the president to get any Democrats. And without any Democrats, that leads the Republicans, we saw during Obamacare. We didn't see this so much in the House. We will now, with very little to lose, in the sense that if you have 35 members worried about the state and local deduction, well, guess what, Mr. Speaker? You can't pass a bill without most of those. You lost 20 of them, a mix of people today that got you to 20. One of the key issues here is the President of the United States tweeted last week, and that's why Ryan was joking, as you said, or almost joking, when he said he's going to be in Asia. The President tweeted the other day, don't touch 401ks. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things they have to do here is take a $1.5 trillion, a big tax cut that's more than $1.5 trillion, and put it in a $1.5 trillion hole in the budget, which means you have to raise some money elsewhere. You have to bring some new revenues in to help pay for this and get it within the budget outline. 401ks, one of the things they're thinking about. The president says no. The chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, who is writing this bill, who will release it next week, even after the president says no, says maybe.
We think in tax reform, we can create incentives for Americans to save more and save sooner, which can help them. We are continuing discussions with the president, all focused on saving more, saving sooner.
401ks to me are very important, and they're important because that's one of the great benefits to the middle class. I didn't want that to go too far. That's why I ended it very quickly. You know, there are certain elements of deals you don't want to negotiate with. 401ks, and Kevin knows it, and I think Kevin Brady is fantastic, but he knows how important 401ks are.
The I think Kevin Brady is fantastic reminds me of, I love the House bill, let's have a Rose Garden celebration, and then you later call it mean. I mean, that is the quicksand the Republican Party is going into as they now put the details on paper.
But the president is right, of course, about the middle class impact of 401ks, and the entire populist selling point of the need to do this is not, the corporate stuff is part of it, like we want to stimulate the economy, but the reason why the president is trying to sell this to most Americans for this to be popular is that it could help the middle class. When the two things you're talking about using to offset the revenue loss from the tax cuts are middle class tools for retirement savings or to, you know, kind of buffer yourself if you live in states with expensive taxes, then aren't you just talking about kind of doing this, right? And so publicly, the goal is still for Republicans to get this passed by the end of the year. But privately, and starting to be publicly now too, people are talking very much about how this could push into the early year, into spring, well past the beginning of the primary season for Republicans. In fact, we reported yesterday, Bloomberg reported that Gary Cohn is no longer on the president's shortlist for the Fed. And when I talked to a senior administration official, one of the explanations for this is that Gary is so important to tax reform that the president can't live without him in that role. Well, of course, the Fed thing doesn't need to happen until next year.
But if you think it's hard to get some of these lawmakers to cast very tough votes in an odd-numbered year, try it in an even-numbered year when they are on the ballot, especially in the House. So the challenge for the Democrats here is they don't have the votes to stop this as long as the Republicans stay together. So the challenge for the Democrats is to put the fear of the voter into a lot of those more moderate or the high-tax Republicans who might be conservatives. They're just in a place where some of the details here are going to be a very tough sell. Here's Nancy Pelosi a short time ago amping up the Democratic message that when the Republicans tell you this is for the middle class, they're lying.
This morning, when the Republicans voted to advance the budget that they put forth, they drew a line in the sand between the middle class and working families and the very wealthy and corporate America.
The question is, look, they don't have the votes, but can they have an effective message that, again, sways some of those Republicans who are looking at Nancy Pelosi and saying, if I lose my seat, she's Speaker?
I mean, I think they're looking at that, but I think there's also a realization that Trump does have more power than perhaps he's given credit for. There's a big difference between a New York Republican, say a Texas Republican. He has a lot of support, and he's gaining more. He has several issues that some Democrats are actually interested in. The 401k, like his daughter Ivanka, the child care tax credit, the mortgage interest deduction. These are issues that Democrats want, and some Democrats in red states have indicated that they're willing to talk with the president about some of these issues. I wouldn't count it out entirely. Also, Republicans, yes, are indeed against many of these issues, but I think Trump is showing that he has a lot more control on the Republican Party that some give him credit for.
No question over the Republicans. I guess the question is, what will the president do? The Speaker's right. He is going to be in Asia next week, but then he'll come back he'll be here for the key moments of this debate. Our White House correspondent, Jeff Zeleny, had a fascinating piece yesterday about the fact that here's a president who, whether you like him or not, can be a very effective communicator. He does have huge sway over Republicans, 85% approval rating over Republicans. Will he hit the road? And in Jeff's piece yesterday, he quoted an administration official saying the president likes his rallies, but he likes staying in the White House more. Some people think he feels a little burned by getting involved in the Alabama Senate race and doesn't want to go out on the road so much anymore. How important is the president to helping Speaker Ryan get those votes?
If you talk to Republicans on Capitol Hill, what they want the president to do is go out on the campaign trail and sell this tax bill. They don't need him involved in the nitty-gritty details because they have to pay for this plan. They don't want him nixing some of those pay-fors on the front end. But what they want him to do is go out there. He is more popular than many of them, and they know that. And so they need the president to back their tax bill because some of these decisions are going to be really tough.
But here's the conundrum on that, which is I think on the nitty-gritty details, the president's instincts are a little more right than the certainly the Republican establishment, the Republican leadership on the Hill. That's where he's this 401k talk, for instance, is a perfect example of where he's kind of got his pulse on where the middle class, his base is, and the Republican leadership doesn't.
Right. His instinct tends to be more populist and some would argue more Democratic, or at least the proposals more aimed at traditional Democratic. Maybe where the parties are all in this churn right now, who knows? But that's where it gets interesting. When he gets out on the road, if he gets out on the road, sometimes he can't resist. He reacts to the crowd, and off we go. So we're at the beginning. This is the first chapter now, but a big victory for the House leadership today. We'll see where the tax debate goes forward. Up next, opioids may be the country's biggest public health crisis right now. Later today, the President of the United States